we go. Good afternoon, everybody. I think I'm a little early. I was so looking forward to being with you today. It's been a while. It's good to have you all here. Thanks for showing up. This gives me a chance to share with you some updates, but also to offer some thoughts at the beginning, and then we can take your questions. The number of topics that I want to talk about today are the migrant crisis that we see in Europe, and also the Pope's call to our church to help those who are in that status of refugee, but also the need for comprehensive immigration in our country. And secondly, I want to make some comments about the new procedures for annulment of marriages that the Holy Father issued recently, and also the expanded authority regarding granting absolution for the sin of abortion, and as part of the Jubilee Year of Mercy. And finally, to talk a little bit about the Holy Father's visit to the United States. It's coming in just a week's time. I think few people are left untouched by the grief of Mr. Abdullah Kurdi, who's a father who lost his wife and young sons, being casualties of their flight away from war and the destitution of their homeland. It awakened resolve in the traditional European havens and around the world, and Pope Francis called upon parishes throughout Europe to take in families and children that are refugees. His call is being met here in part with a request for donations to Catholic Relief Services, the international humanitarian agency of the Catholic community in this country. Catholic Relief Services works in more than 90 countries on 4 continents and will contribute to efforts to resettle and support the refugees that are flooding into Europe. Here, though, in Chicago, our own Catholic Charities is resettling Syrian families and expecting more if the U.S. permits them to enter. This current crisis brings up a larger issue, one of peace and economic justice in every country around the world. And indeed, the pictures of that little boy, Aylan Kurdi, who was washed up on the shore, could have been taken in the sea off the Florida Keys, the Italian islands, or the American desert, or in any of the hundreds of places where refugees risk their lives every day. The Holy Father has spoken about economic injustices and inequity, and these situations are the direct result of that war in Syria and also the economic injustice around the world. As citizens of the world's most powerful nation, we need to rally together, as we do whenever there's a crisis. And particularly, I speak to people of the Catholic faith, to make a strong and personal commitment to help those who are in need and to remedy the situation. Catholic Charities in Chicago has helped refugees' families for more than 40 years through their refugee resettlement program. Last year, they resettled about 200 refugees' families, most of them from the Middle East, including from Iraq and Syria. They are working to settle as many families from the conflicts in Syria as the State Department admits, often in partnership with parishes who sponsor these families. And so donations to Catholic Charities can be made to their refugee program, and we have posted on our website that address for Catholic Charities. I also call on the leaders of our own country to recognize the human dignity of each and every person in the need of our help, but also to reorder our priorities and granting assistance. And I ask each of you to reach out to your elected officials and tell them that the welfare of human beings seeking freedom that we enjoy is important to you. That is why I'm pleased to be able to forward to Pope Francis this week 2 separate statements of solidarity by the Priests for Justice and Immigrants and the Sisters and Brothers of Immigrants here in the Archdiocese of Chicago. I'm pleased to announce today that a pilgrimage and prayer service will be held this Saturday, September 19th at Federal Plaza, to underscore the next steps to be taken in immigration reform. Thousands of petitions signed by parishioners, religious, and clergy will be sent to the President asking for an end to family deportation. And I think I'd be remiss if I did not challenge the sometimes hateful language that we see today in our political discourse, which demeans immigrants. This language fosters a mentality that reduces desperate men and women and children to a soundbite designed to pander to our lower nature. It's unworthy of this blessed country, a land of immigrants. Rather, let us remember that we have risen up before to welcome those who are dislocated by poverty, war, and famine, and we must do so again. There are two areas where the Holy Father has reaffirmed the responsibility and the authority of local dioceses and clergy to be agents of mercy and faith and conduits of salvation for our people. One is the annulment procedure, and the other has to do with granting absolution for the sin of abortion. Let me take the first one. What the Holy Father has done is, in effect, reinstituted a procedure that was in place in this country between 1971 and 1983. For the most part, the major impact is not having a second instance where the case has to be tried a second time. Please understand that the matter of annulment is taken very seriously by the Church. We believe in the indissolubility of marriage, and the Holy Father has reaffirmed our authority as bishops to rule in these matters. As he says, it does not pass unnoticed that a shorter procedure may endanger the principle of indissolubility. For precisely this reason, the Pope says, I have required that in such a procedure the judge is to be the bishop himself, who, due to his pastoral office, is with Peter, and he is the successor of Peter, the greatest guarantor of Catholic unity and in discipline. St. John Paul II also was an individual who was involved in the work that we had with the annulment process, and with the 1983 code gave other reasons why annulments could be considered. I also want to say something about what the Holy Father has done with regard to abortions. For the most part, again, what he is allowing in terms of granting priests the faculty to absolve abortions, the sin of abortion during the Holy Year of Mercy, is really no different than what we have practiced in this archdiocese, and in fact in many dioceses across the United States. This archdiocese has granted a priest that faculty, and so they have not had to refer the cases to bishop. What the Pope has done is universalize this throughout the whole Church. And finally, let me say something about the Pope's visit to the United States. In a little more than a week, he will be coming to the United States for the first time. The main reason that he scheduled coming to this country is a meeting on the family in Philadelphia, but now that has grown into other meetings as well, including speaking to a joint session of Congress, visiting the White House, speaking to the bishops, the American bishops at St. Matthew's Cathedral, celebrating the Mass of Canonization for Junipero Serra, and also speaking at the United Nations. And there's also a scheduled visit to Ground Zero in New York. What's important to note is that the Pope is attending this meeting on the family to highlight the importance of supporting our families and marriages. Families are under great stress, and he wants to be a partner with them and help them in his presence at this important conference. Based on his very frank and direct talk, we can imagine that he will speak very clearly about the issues of the world, the economy, and also the need for greater compassion for those who are marginalized in our society, including those who are in prisons, the sick, the poor, the homeless, and the unborn. But no one knows exactly what he will say along the way. He is a pope of surprises in many ways. And in fact, I have witnessed to that firsthand in the conversations that I have had with him. He is a man who is very open to discussion about issues and really does want to hear from other people. I think it's going to be a great moment for our country, for our church, and it will be an opportunity for him to get to know us in this country a little better as well. So those are my prepared remarks, and I'm happy now to take your questions. And I don't know how we're going to do this, but I can just call on people. So, yes, please. If you would be helpful to me, if you would say where you're from, your name and where you're from, because then I can do that.
Archbishop, my name is Derek Blakeman. I'm a reporter at Channel 2. And in your remarks on immigration, you did not mention the name Donald Trump. But I'm wondering if you were referring in part to him when you talked about words, harsh language, rhetoric toward immigrants.
Well, I guess I would say that for anyone who, I don't think it's just one individual who has used language that's inappropriate. We've seen this in the past year or two where immigrants have been described in very demeaning terms. And my hope would be that while that might be a nice soundbite to get for a political constituency, in the long run, it's demeaning to our country to be perceived that way in the world, as though we are heartless about the plight of people who are very desperate. And so I would do it as, I would say this as a strong patriot. Yes.
Hi, I'm Mary Conroy with Relevant Radio, and thank you for your words today. And in the beginning, you had mentioned the word mercy, and I remember hearing you speak at Holy Name this past April for the World Youth Day kickoff, and you talked about mercy with the World Youth Day theme. So my question is, in addition to CRS and for us local in Chicago with Catholic Charities, what can we communicate to our listeners at Relevant Radio to encourage them to better engage in the solidarity you're talking about with mercy? And I do remember you saying that mercy is not just something we give, it's something bigger we participate in. So with World Youth Day, with the World Meeting of Families coming up and everything, what can we share with our listeners?
Well, I think that mercy is a theme of the Holy Year that the Holy Father is going to inaugurate on December the 8th, and we have here in our own Archdiocese the Holy Door that's going to be open at that time. It's also, I think, relevant for the upcoming synod, where the face of mercy is Jesus Christ. As the Holy Father said, the face of God's mercy is Jesus Christ. So the more that we can draw people closer to that encounter during the Holy Year, I think we will achieve the goals that the Holy Father has set. But in the context of mercy, in terms of the geopolitical issue of refugees, I think mercy also has something to say to all of us as we reflect on the blessings of living in this country, a great opportunity that we should not take for granted. There are a lot of desperate people in the world who have not had the opportunity and the blessings that we have. And so the United States and the people of America have always shown that kind of mercy and the fulsome support that they've given to resettle refugees. I remember, especially right after Saigon fell in the Vietnam War, the many, many Vietnamese people who came here and who have contributed mightily to this country. That mercy on our part, that generosity on our part, and that welcome has been repaid 1,000-fold. Please.
Regarding the synod you just mentioned, it's been reported lots of places that you are been called by the Holy Father to go. Will you be attending the synod, and what will your role be there?
Well, the synod, as you know, is going to be meeting most of October, and the Holy Father will be making some final appointments to the synod. He hasn't done that yet publicly, so it's premature for me to say anything.
Could we get your thoughts on the new superintendent for the schools?
Yes.
And there has been some questions brought to me that he had the teachers in Cincinnati sign a morals clause. Do you support that? Will the teachers here be doing that as well? We know that when he worked in the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, he carried out the policies that were defined by the Archdiocese. And we have our own policies with regard to hiring practices, and he is fully aware of that and committed to following the line that we already have in place. And why was he chosen?
Well, there was a national search by our school board. We used broad consultation in surfacing a number of candidates. We took 7 months to hire someone. He seemed to have, for me, at least as I looked at all the materials, the right skill sets for us. He is an individual who is dedicated personally to Catholic education, has proven experience, a great love of the church, and I think a good track record of administration. please.
Archbishop Alan Kraszewski from
Yeah.
ABC. And listening to your remarks regarding the annulment procedures and, of course, the absolution of sin for the sin of abortion, that in concert with the ongoing discussions that will occur at the synod. As you know, these make headlines, it seems, every single time something about that is mentioned. As you've phrased it, it's somewhat like an ongoing, developing thing, and maybe in Chicago it hasn't changed that much. So can you put it in perspective for us? Are we seeing, under Pope Francis, a radical new approach to changes in terms of dealing with people, or no?
Well, I think that what we're seeing with this Holy Father is an approach that really does put people in their circumstances of life first. He wants to make sure, as he has said before, that we really accompany people. We are walking with them through the journey of life. And so I think that that is the theme as well that he wants to use throughout the synod. The synod, the word synod comes from two Greek words that means walking together with. And so the Holy Father doesn't want the synod just to be a meeting. He wants it to be a process in which the Church once again takes up the understanding of itself as a community of faith, a people on pilgrimage, in which we help each other along the way. And when we do that, we're going to encounter people in various stages of their own faith development. And what he's saying is, let's be sensitive to that. Let's see what their particular needs are. Let's make sure we know the smell of the sheep, and that we have the smell of the sheep on us as well. So that's a different approach than saying, these are the rules of the Church, these are the teachings, and then we're going to measure you in that by that standard. But rather he's saying, let's first of all help people understand the dignity that they have. If you recall, in the Bible, and this is a very biblical approach the Pope is taking, in the Bible, before they ever get to the Ten Commandments and the Decalogue, they tell the story about who the people are, who God is for them, and who they belong to. And so the Holy Father is doing something very biblical here. He is looking for a way in which we can recapture a sense of being a church that, first of all, comes to an identity of who we are as a pilgrim people, and then we can help others move in the direction that is correct behavior. But he starts there by helping people understand the great dignity that they have as believers. Yes. Oh, yeah, sure. You go ahead.
Well, okay, the follow would simply be, and there are headlines too, that there are quote-unquote conservative bishops who are pushing back against this. Do you see this personally or no?
Well, I think that there are going to be people who are going to disagree with each other, not necessarily with the Pope, but with each other's propositions, which the Pope has invited. He has said at the synod, the last synod, nobody should come in this room and say, you can't say that. Well, if you do that, then you're going to get people who disagree with each other. So by virtue of the fact that he has asked us to speak openly with each other, that's good. You know, the way that people have sometimes understood the disagreements among bishops is a little bit, I think, extreme. If you go back to the early councils of the Church, when bishops debated about things, they ended up pulling each other's beards. Well, I don't see that happening. We're all clean-shaven anyway. Yes.
Archbishop Mike Flannery with
Yes.
Fox 32. There has also been some lively discussion about the prospect of a debate or a discussion over clerical celibacy. For the first 1,000 years, the clergy was not celibate. Do you see movement on that issue coming?
Well, we already do have married priests in the Church. Let's put that on the table. I mean, not only in the Eastern Rite, but also in the Western, where people who are of different faiths, maybe they were ministered, were ordained as married men. So we do have that already. But I think that the real thing to emphasize today, at least for what the Church needs, is the dynamism that comes from men coming forward, dedicating their whole life, giving that one last thing of their own families for the service of God's people. That has always captured the imagination and love of our people. And so I would want to make sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that there's something very special about having an individual give up their own family, live a life of celibacy for the service of the church. I see it each and every day in the priests that we have, and I think so do our people. Wherever I go, people tell me how much they care for and love and admire their priest, and I think that is something that I want to continue to encourage.
Could I follow up?
Sure, please.
Real quickly. Out in the pews, I hear this from people over the years who connect celibacy in some way, rightly or wrongly, to the sex abuse scandal. Could you address that? You
Yes.
must hear people say that as well.
I haven't heard it, but I would say this. Statistically, if you look at the people who have abused children, they are not celibate. If you look at the national averages, the majority of people, vast majority of people who have abused children are not celibate. And so I think that it might be an easy target, an easy conclusion for people to make, but the actual facts don't bear that out.
Thank you. My name is Amber. I'm from Azteca, and I want to find out. I know there's a lot of families, Latino families, that are traveling to D.C. obviously to ask the Holy Pope about the immigration reform. What's your intake of that? And you could be able to elaborate that in Spanish with me.
Well, yes, maybe afterwards we can. I can give a little interview in Spanish. I'd be happy to do that. I think that I have been very clear about my position from day one. You were in this room on just a year ago on the what was it, the 20th of September. It was this week that I was living in silence with the fact that I was the new Archbishop, and it was not public yet. And I snuck in town on the day before. And so from the very beginning, I spoke about the need for comprehensive immigration reform. People are living in the shadows. I see it each and every day. We have, for instance, candidates who could study for the priesthood in this archdiocese who don't have documents. And we cannot allow them to go forward until we get that. So we see that in so many different ways. But we also see in our parishes the suffering of people, the threat of deportation, the fact that they're unable to get financial aid for school. So as far as I'm concerned, it is an injustice that needs to go forward. I have asked that Congress take up the immigration reform. I think the votes are there in both the House and the Senate. The Senate already has passed a bill. It's time now for this to go forward and to pass comprehensive immigration reform. Please.
Joyce DeRiga, Catholic New World. Just a quick question.
This ought to be a softball.
What's happening to our readers? Like many dioceses, there are some dioceses who've made annulments free. Is there a chance that we're going to be doing something like that?
We don't really make an actual charge. We ask people, we tell the people what our costs are, and they're minimal. I think that the costs, by the way, are going to be going down simply because there won't be any second instance. But no one is denied an annulment because of cost in this archdiocese. Yes.
Archbishop Rodriguez from Chicago. I know we're on a time crunch. We have a 5 p.m. So would it be possible for you just to briefly say something in Spanish for our viewers in regards to what do you think the United States can learn from the migration or the immigration crisis in Europe, and how we can do things better here in this country?
Yes, I would really rather do that at the end of the conference. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Miller, WBBM Radio. Do you think the church is officially moving closer or will move closer to accepting gay marriage?
No.
Why not?
Well, I think that because deep within our tradition and our teaching is an understanding that marriage is a sacrament, and that it is a sacrament between a man and a woman, and in that committed love, which brings about and perpetuates the human race, is a symbol of what Christ does for the church. That his coming to be with us is that bond that brings about new life. So from Paul's letter early on, especially to the Ephesians, it's very clear that marriage between a man and wife is not just a contract, a civil arrangement, but it's a sacrament for us.
Can I just follow up?
Sure, you can.
Surely there are many millions, thousands anyway, of gay Catholics. Do do you feel that, and probably hundreds in Chicago, if not thousands, do you feel like you're letting them down in some way?
Well, I don't know. I think that I have looked for ways in which I've had outreach and meetings with gays and lesbians here in Chicago since my arrival. We do have ongoing discussions. I think that if you talk to them, they will tell you that those discussions have been encouraging for both them and me. And I want to continue to do that. But this is a precise question you're asking, and I don't see it as a deal breaker in terms of the relationship that I have with the gay community. Yes.
Archbishop Dina Barrett, WGN.
Yes.
Will you have a chance to meet with the Holy Father when he is in this country, and how will you best be able to communicate his message to the people of Chicago?
Well, he is meeting with all the bishops at St. Matthew's Cathedral. I think it's right after the White House. Whether or not he's going to greet each one of us individually, I have not been told that. I rather doubt it. There are over 400 of us, and it would take him quite a while to do that. But I think that the short answer to the question is I don't think I'm going to have a personal meeting with him or get to greet him, given the security involved and given the time constraints that he has. I'll be at 2 events of his, but that would be it. I am doing a little something with regard to Junipero Serra, who's being canonized, because when I was in Rome this last time, I brought to the Pope the cross that Junipero Serra came to the United States with, or came to America with, from Spain, and wore his whole life. It was buried with him. When his body was exhumed in 1943, they found the cross there and had it in the archives. We were able to bring that to Rome through the Catholic Extension Society. I presented it to the Holy Father as a way to welcome him to this country. The cross will be on the altar for the canonization Mass. They will bring that again there. The Holy Father took it in his hand, looked at it very intently, and then kissed it and put it back in the box that I had. So that's our small contribution to what we have done. Yes, I want to get somebody else here.
In terms of the 2 events that you'll be attending, which events will those be, and how accessible will you be post-event to chat with us?
I think that it depends really on what security is. I want to be available to you. I don't know what security will be. I will be coming with the bishops on the bus to St. Matthew's, and then we're going to go to a luncheon, I understand, and then we're going to go to the shrine. So if there's a way you can penetrate that bubble, I would be happy to make myself available. I just don't know what the security arrangements are. I'd be happy to be with you. I want to get somebody else here who hasn't. Yes, right. Yeah. Please.
Anya from the Tribune. I have a 3-part question.
Oh boy.
You have mentioned, you've used the phrase expanded authority a few times already, and I'm curious if there are ways in which the Pope has expanded authority to the bishops, smaller ways that haven't necessarily made headlines, that you've noticed in your first year here in Chicago, as well as when you were still in Spokane. I also wanted to find out a little bit more about your role when the Pope is here in our country. Will you be in Washington, in New York, and Philadelphia, and what specifically will your role be there in that role? And thirdly, have you spoken in your first year here in Chicago with divorced and remarried Catholics? You mentioned gay Catholics, but specifically divorced and remarried Catholics who have high expectations for the Synod and have expressed a lot of hope to you.
Well, with regard to your first question of the expansion of faculties or ways in which bishops operate, really with the beginning of the Second Vatican Council, we've seen a decentralization of various aspects of the Church's life and discipline that have been more attuned to the local level and the local bishop. The Holy Father has indicated that he is very respectful of the authority of a diocesan bishop and feels as though a lot of the things that are procedurally done at the central office could be done locally. I agree with that. I think that we're more in touch with the situation. You do have to preserve unity within the Church to make sure there is a standard of accountability, no doubt, but nonetheless it does entrust to the local bishop some authority. Your second question was about my own participation in the visit. I'm a minor player. He's not coming to Chicago. He's going to be in the cities of Washington, New York, and Philadelphia. So I'm just showing up to be with all the other bishops at these other venues. So I have absolutely no first line presence. There's absolutely nothing that I have. I'm only going to Washington, however. I'm not going to New York is the United Nations, and I can't go to Philadelphia only because of my schedule won't permit it. But I will be at the events in Washington. And then thirdly, I have had conversations with people who are divorced in the 40 years I've been a priest. So I know their aspirations and their pain. Especially if they've tried to work in a system in which they've tried to look for a way to remain in the life of the church. But I think I can speak both intelligently and sensitively to their situation because of that experience.
Archbishop, we have time for maybe 2 more questions.
All right, good, yes.
Do you have a message to pilgrims who are going to the meeting of the families in Philadelphia? What would you want them to take from here in Chicago and share with that meeting? And what do you hope that they get from that?
Well,
Tell us what that is about, sir.
Oh, yes.
For those who don't know what it is.
Right, thank you. That's a very helpful thing. As I said before, he is coming for the meeting on families. This is a Congress, worldwide Congress on families and marriage. It is a way in which, much like, for instance, we have World Youth Day that centers on the youth. This is centering on families and married life. And so it is a way in which people are going to hear different talks about family life and so on. The Holy Father is going to be there and give a major address and also celebrate Mass for the group. In terms of pilgrims who are going there, I think it's just great sometimes just to be together. And so I would say, first of all, enjoy the experience. Secondly, be attentive to what you really are hearing. Listen to what the Holy Father is saying. Feel supported in this moment. And then lastly, I would say travel safe. Yes, Michael.
Michael Lockman from Crux. One of the least speculated speeches that's coming up is the Pope's address to bishops in Washington. And yet these are moments when the Pope tends to be the most challenging during his visits. What do you think the message is that American bishops need to hear right now from the Pope?
Oh, well, I'm not going to tell the Pope what to say, but I think that what I would like to hear for myself, because I can't speak of any other situation, is to be encouraged to really continue the trajectory that the Pope has set forward in his own pontificate. That is to make sure that we are walk with, as he called it, cercanía, nearness to people, that we also have a way in which we're going to be attentive to what's happening in their life, and that we also are those good shepherds who are willing to have the people inform us about how they're living the gospel in their life and the various circumstances and demands that are there. I think that the Pope is going to speak about those issues, the role of the bishop as servant. And I need to hear that, because it's very easy when you get in a position of authority and you're leading an enormous organization like the Catholic Church in this area to begin to live in a bubble, because I'm at meetings all day with people who have to make all sorts of decisions about the institutional life of the Church. And you can begin to kind of be distanced from that. So I need the prodding of the Pope to be able to make sure I go back to the local level. That's why I really have to be intentional about going and visiting parishes like I did this last weekend. I went to a parish to have a picnic, an outdoor mass, to visit people who are handing out food at food centers, of working with those who are fighting for immigration reform. I need to get my hands into the mix of things, and I think the Pope is going to encourage us to do more of that.
Archbishop, just one last question on security. We understand that one threat has been thwarted against the Pope on his U.S. visit already today. What are the fears for security for the Pope, and how does faith play into that?
Well, the Pope has said before he's going to leave the security questions up to the people who deal with security, and he's not going to worry about it. And I think that's the best we can do. We have competent people in this country. I didn't know about this thwarting. I didn't know if there was a credible actual plot against him. I hadn't heard that. I think that we have good security in place in this country, and he's not going to worry about it, and I don't think that any of us should either. We trust the people who are involved in that line of work in our country. Thank you all. Good to be with you.